Welcome to part two. What is this part two about?
So follow up why you need to stop waiting for Yah to tell you where to go. You're trying to flee Babylon? Stop waiting. Get reacquainted with your testimony, because in that is where he's telling you where, when, and whatever else about where to go.
And moving abroad or doing anything for that matter, doing anything, we mentioned this earlier, and that is that we are afraid to fail.
Yeah, afraid to be wrong.
That's it, afraid to be wrong.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we don't learn or exercise the muscles that it takes to become dominant, to rule in particular areas. I think this is partly why the scriptures say the kingdom of heaven is as little children, because they're not afraid to learn. They're not afraid to look embarrassed, because they know eventually they're going to learn how to do the thing. Could be skateboarding, could be playing the piano, doesn't matter. They're going to get it eventually. And you'll still be stuck at first base, not knowing squat, is what the deal is. But waiting on him to tell you is partly like a religious exercise, and it makes you look good, it makes you look holy, but then you don't end up with the desires of your heart. You don't end up moving, you don't end up doing anything for that matter, which is a dangerous state to be in. One of the things that I think we need to come out of is we must be doing something wrong. He says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed.
Oh, I change not.
I change not. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed. So if he doesn't change, and if he still answers prayer, then who need to change?
Me and you. The Most High does not go through character development.
So,
but we
pretty good.
But we do.
And in fact, we go through a lot of character development or change. For example, the Father said, I will not wipe out all of your enemies at once, when he was talking about the ancestors going into the promised land. The reason why is because they didn't know how, the Israelites did not know how to handle the wild beasts. So and they had to learn over time. And if all of their enemies had been wiped out, the enemies who knew how to deal with the wild beasts, then the Israelites would have been in a heap of trouble.
Been overwhelmed entirely.
So he gave room for their character development to take place. Well, one of the things I'm thinking is the way we've been doing something. You know, they say practice makes perfect. Then somebody came around and said, no. Actually, perfect practice makes perfect. Because you could practice something, but practice it wrong for decades,
years,
centuries, thousands of years.
That's what we were saying just the last video, right?
Don't ask the Most High to do what you ought to be doing. And don't try to do what only he can do. And don't confuse the two.
Like, Dad, can you tell him the example of the car? We were struggling with money. I was very young. And you were upset with the Father about the vehicle. Can you sum that up? Yeah, so there's a lesson. I'm one of those guys who had a car after I got my license at around 16 years of age. And suddenly, fast forward, I'm married with several sons. I'm sitting on our steps of our townhouse on the outside near the driveway, and there's no vehicle in the driveway. So you can imagine as a dude how that feels, right? And plus we're hurting for funds, and I'm praying. And I hear in my heart, not an audible voice, in my heart, because kind of that's where he lives, right? Okay, so I hear something along the lines of, I said to him, you could make a vehicle and a van, because we needed vans with 4 sons. You could make it fall out of the sky and land right there in the driveway. And I was stone cold serious about that. And he answered me and said, you're right, I could. However, because I reign on the just and the unjust, the principle of automation, of factories and how to do all that was already released in the earth. And someone acted on it. And now cars have been invented. And you need to go through the system, because I mentioned that in the earlier video about processes. There's already a process in place as to how one can get vehicles. It is called, look at the classified ads, or go to a dealership, or go buy one from an owner, something like that. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so what I did was flip through the pages of paper, found something in Bethesda, Maryland. In fact, we wanted a blue panel van, and we wanted one with a TV in it, because we tended to take journeys back to the Midwest
or to the ocean with our children, and we would put in these video cassettes for them to watch, and we all were blessed by that. So we tended to want things like that. And we found this vehicle, and I remember going, a young man, I'll go ahead and tell you his name, Jamal. He's our neighbor, my neighbor's son, kind of a thing. And he had come over to the house and he said, Mr. Mark, he was basically encouraging me, you need to walk in faith and go out there and do this thing. But he knows our plight. No money, no moolah. And so he and I went. And sure enough, there was this van, and there was this father who was the father of a couple of sons whose wife had passed away. And they had purchased the van and taken a trip to the Grand Canyon and back. That's why I had a TV in it and other things like that. Because this is many years ago. This is in the 90s, I think, early 90s. So I said, oh, wow, this looks really good. And so I then went, I'm not really all that mechanically inclined, so I went to my namesake friend, Mark, and he said, sure, I'll go with you to look at the van. Pop the hood, we'll drive it around. And he's a mechanic, and he says, oh, yeah, this is a great vehicle. And so, but he looks at me, he knows me very well, and he says, but you're not going to lie. What are you going to do when he asks you about money? Because you ain't got no money. And so I said, I don't know. And so we're sitting in the guy's kitchen, little round table that they eat breakfast on, and I'm talking to the guy over in Bethesda, and he says something to me. I can't even remember. And I don't even remember what I said. I'm kind of introverted, so I need to think before I speak usually. So these last couple of videos Josiah and I are doing are very interesting for me, because normally I think first, but now I'm just talking. And so I just talked, and I know he replied, well, that's okay. Tell you what, you seem like a nice guy. You got a nice family. You're who we would want this van to go to. Let's give you a little time and see what happens. I was like, oh, all right. My wife, Marlene, had left a job to go homeschool our 4 sons, and she hadn't received monies from, I guess, retirement or whatever from that particular job. And the person who was in charge of those kinds of things in HR was in another country, as in Germany. And Marlene got to eventually interact with this person, and lo and behold, suddenly half the money, which I'm gonna go ahead and tell you was like 3 to 4K, was available to Marlene. Then I get a call from a mutual money market fund, which I used to participate in. And I don't mean to brag, but the reason why I participated in mutual money market funds is because when I was in college, I screwed up a marketing exam and by saying, let's not dwell on numbers in my first essay question. And my professor was my guidance counselor, or whatever you call it, mentor. And he said, Mark, come here. I said, what, Bob? And Bob Maple. And he goes, Mark, this is a marketing finance class, and you started the sentence, let's not dwell on numbers. And he said, tell you what, you tend to fly to Washington, D.C. a lot. Why don't you go to some various places like Merrill Lynch and a whole bunch of other places and just tell me what you learned. Well, I had done that and learned some things, so much so that when I joined the IBM eventually years later, I started investing. Well, it had gone on for a while, and then I had discontinued investing. Well, the investment company had been looking for me to send me my money, or it was going to be sent back to the state where they are incorporated, Texas, I think. So the deal is they had about 4K available to me. You put those two together, and all of a sudden, I'm going back to Bethesda with a certified, or whatever it's called, check. And we got the van that was blue panel, Plymouth Voyager with a television. In fact, my mother-in-law had been praying and said, I had seen in a vision y'all had the van, and she didn't know anything about what I was doing at the time. So this is in response to Josiah saying that you need to go about doing something. I'm also trying to say to you, I have mentioned processes in part 1 of this video, which you could go back and watch. talking about you have first the seed, then the bloom, then the full corn in the ear, something like that. 3-step process. There's a lot of 3-step processes in the Bible. And what I'm hinting at is I'm learning that the way we've been practicing, I said that it's not practice makes perfect. It's perfect practice makes perfect, because you could be doing it wrong all the time you've been doing it. So what I'm saying is all of our lives is living as people who are trying to walk in royalty, walk in the truths of the word, walk in the Bible, walk in the kingdom point of view. It could be we've been contaminated by stinking thinking or erroneous ways to accomplish things. Because I could have sat there and constantly, I was fasting and praying. In fact, I was underweight at one point in time, if you can imagine that. Anyway, and so the point is, but that little shift just to go and do something. And the same thing happened to me with regard to finding a job. When a friend told me in the Washington Post, Mark, you're going to have to go there and find a job. I had never done that. And the Washington Post classified ads is, well, in those days, 90s, it was thick. Got a job. My point is, I think what we have been doing is that we are trying to move abroad, get a house, get a vehicle, get a spouse, whatever is our heart's desire. And the way we've been going about it needs to have some review. Because like he said, I changed not, therefore you sons of Jacob are not consumed. So he doesn't change. So if there's a delay, there's a change that's needed in us. And it's not negative, it's not bad, because the purpose of us is to be rulers of the kingdom and how it operates. And it's not in outer space, it's in earth. And one of the requirements to operate in this realm is you must have a body. So there are things that you and I are required to do that he cannot do unless he does them through us. Yeah, and the scripture says, a body thou hast desired. Sorry, I tend to quote King James Version, but that's what it says, literally. And so what we need to do is be aware of this and kind of look at our techniques. There are some times that we are saying, God, please do this. Most High, please do that. Father, Yah this. Yah that. When actually we are supposed to declare or demand something. It would be nice, though, if we had spent time intimately with him to understand his will. Because it's one thing to be a servant. It's another thing to be a son. And the difference is, a servant, this is I think in John 17, a servant doesn't know the master's will. Find out what that is and execute and implement it. Because a friend and a son, a friend knows the will of the master. So that's, so I went through the story, Josiah, talking about the man, and I talked about it's important that we understand there are things that are required of us that we need to do, and we can't keep asking Father Yahweh, Father Yahuwah, the Most High God, whatever. We can't keep asking him to do the things that we need to do. Right. And so we might be, I went back to practice makes perfect, to change it to perfect practice makes perfect, because you could have been practicing your faith incorrectly, off a little bit there.
Kind of out of joint.
Out of alignment. Yes, that's what out of joint means. Out of alignment with what? His will.
Right. And you have to, I think you were probably saying you got to do something. Well, we said it in the first part. We said at the beginning of this video, you got to do something. I was also reminded of like a friend of mine. I was out of a job at the time, and I was really, really frustrated. That one position that I had for maybe a week went totally like, it was terrible. And so I'm out of a job. I was complaining. My friend came over, was at the dinner table like we are now, and all of a sudden cracked open his laptop, and we went on Indeed, LinkedIn. He was like, let's just look. And I was like, what? I'm upset. Like, what? But long story short, he did it, and that's the job I eventually got at UMD. Actually, a few weeks later, they're like, we saw your resume.
University of Maryland.
Sorry, yeah, University of Maryland. And so, and it was, I enjoyed the position for as long as I had it, but instead of just sitting around worshiping my circumstance, praying about or whatever, he was like, how about let's just do something? Let's just go look, seek. What is it? Ask, seek, knock in Matthew or wherever it is. Mark.
Yeah.
I think ask, seek, knock. Get on the path of seeking something. You know, what is it? Proverbs also said it's the honor of kings to search out a matter.
But the glory of Yah or Elohim is to conceal a thing. His glory conceals it.
Yeah. It's almost like a game almost.
Yeah, to see who's really serious.
Who's serious.
Yeah.
You hungry?
Exactly.
That's
you got to
what I
be
see.
hungry,
When
not
we watch-
H-U-H-O-N-G-R-Y.
Yeah, you know, you say that when you're watching the game, right? You're like, someone makes a boneheaded move or something, you're like, they ain't hungry.
Exactly.
They don't want it, so you got to be hungry. Before we go, at least for this part, I'm also reminded the scripture, kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. And you are sharing with us, and it's really blessed our family that the interpretation is that that's a good thing happening to heaven, because that's prayer and seeking and knocking happening in the heavenlies. And so it's like that scene in Jingle All the Way where Arnold Schwarzenegger is trying to get the popular action figure. All families are trying to get this toy. And so when the store, everyone's lined up Black Friday or something like that. And then as soon as the doors open, stampede to go get this Turbo Man doll. So it's got to be the same thing with the kingdom of heaven. You need to be pressed up against the pearly gates. There need to be footprints on all the angels. I mean, y'all laughing.
But I think what the deal is, because the kingdom of heaven, it doesn't come with observation, it's within you. I think what the deal is we need to be violent with what we thought we understood, because we don't understand the way we should understand, and therefore we're going to have to be violent with it. Yeah. There are those in 2 Thessalonians who are deceived because they don't have a love of the truth. If you have a love of the truth at any cost, it will cost the way you've always done it, which is most likely a religious way. And so we're going to end it there. We were talking about what now? You said people need to stop what?
Stop waiting for Yah to tell you where to go. That's basically it. It's different variations, but stop waiting. I know you don't mind waiting on the Lord.
It looks good. Looks good on your Christian resume.
But stop waiting and start doing the things He put in your heart. Remember your testimony.
All righty.